Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I'm going to tell you a story that an old college roommate told me one night. I don't know why I feel I have to tell it, but I guess that's not the point now. My friend's father joined a biker gang in the summer of 1975, and the outfit he rode with based themselves in Flagstaff, Arizona, but ran all over the Southwest and drove coke from the Mexican border as far as Colorado. It was a different time. Many of the brothers were Vietnam vets, as my friend's father was, or products of broken homes. For some of them, the only meaning of freedom was cocaine-fueled rides over the open highways in the desert that could last days or weeks, or as long as there was gasoline in the tank. Some guys were just maniacs. I know now that my friend's father was a lost soul. I think that maybe Vietnam had taught him too much about fire and cruelty. When he was a rider, he went by Apache, but his real name was James, and he grew up far away in Michigan. Still, my friend said, when he rode, he had to fight. He had to carry a gun and a knife, and if it came down to it, he had to use them to protect the gang's interests. His father told him he shot a man in Reno. Just to watch him die, I joked, between beers. But my friend returned cold contempt, and from then on I had no reason to doubt how serious he was. There was a night, this was the point, he told me, where Apache and 3 of his friends stopped in a big divot in the New Mexico desert off Interstate 10 to skim cocaine off the package they were supposed to bring to Phoenix, get high and crash out under the stars. They built a fire out of the brush and fed it until it threw enough light, and somehow it grew. It burned taller and hotter than the meager fuel they threw on it should have allowed. So they shot whiskey. They talked shit. They wrestled, pure machismo bullshit, in the sand. 2 of them, tough guys in the chapter like Apache, wrangled drunkenly by the fire, half-heartedly trying to push the other in it. One caught the other with an elbow, unintentional but hard across the mouth, so that his lip split and blood ran out in a slow trickle. He flicked the back of his hand across it, flicked the blood away to show he wasn't hurt or scared. In short, not a coward. This is fun. Apache watched 2 little droplets fly awry into the fire, and then it roared up like it wasn't 2 drops of blood, but 10 gallons of gas thrown on it all at once. And there was no more brush underneath the fire, but fire for the sake of fire. Fire spit out of the ground itself. They turned and saw the fire changing shapes, taking on forms and shifting in and out of this dimension. The fire talked to them in a voice that was not heard so much as felt. The language was not one that they knew, but regardless could understand. And it did not talk in words, but in colors. The colors were those of the sky at dusk and the sky at dawn. The colors were red and purple, black and gold. The colors overwhelmed sight first, then hearing, then smell and touch, until you could taste the violence and frenzy in each color, such that it drove you mad, and you could only hope to emulate each color, each emotion. When Apache surfaced, he saw the 2 men who had been wrestling sprawled out, each face down before the fire, as if prostrate and in worship. One faced toward him at an unnatural angle, the eyes wide and the pupils dilated. The bump in his neck told without fault that it had been snapped in one motion. The other lay bleeding profusely from many wounds, and the sand seemed to suck the blood down and toward the fire as quickly as it came, as if the earth itself was thirsty. Apache looked to the sky. The stars were burning red. They were all blazing perfect crimson. In his right hand, he was holding the hair of his last surviving friend. His face was bloodied. He was unable to speak. His mouth was wide, sucking air despite the want to spit up blood. He was caught in between. "Please," he seemed to mouth. Apache was pulling his hair back, exposing the naked throat, the jugular vein. The blood flowed from the corners of his mouth and seemed to form an X on the fatal spot, the bullseye. In his left hand, he held his boot knife, a stiletto of Italian manufacture stolen from the chest harness of a young man he knew was named Joe Freeman, whose life ended in the jungle outside Zakam Mai. The knife had been the object of his envy for months. Its blade was deployed. Out of boredom in the weeks before, Apache had honed it to surgical sharpness. The blade reflected scarlet light. The handle seemed to radiate a cosmic heat. His hands were not his own. "No!" he screamed to the fire. It replied, "The sun will rise." He closed his eyes. My friend said that at this point in the first telling of the story, his father's hands were hidden beneath the kitchen table, but he could tell, that they were clenched and trembling. The sun must rise. He came to in a Tennessee back road when his bike had run out of gas. His leathers were gone. The stiletto was gone. His hands were sheathed in his riding gloves, only the knuckles showing. Beneath, they were sticky with dried blood. He left the bike. The story ended. We went to sleep and never talked about it again. I thought his father was just crazy, some poor devil that had done some terrible things and lost the reasons for how or for why. Maybe he'd tried to reinvent them so he could live with himself.
Be me. I have worked at Starbucks for 3.5 years. Deal with many crooked people, but the worst are druggists and the homeless. Usually closer, so when the sun goes down all the foul people come out. The manager eventually made me a shift lead because I worked the night shift so much and no other shift wanted to be in such a dangerous environment at night. Eventually got the same 4 closers every night, so we became a tight crew. Loud people and druggists in the bathroom have become the norm. Dealers in the area actually used the homeless to sell their bad batches to other homeless, and they would get paid a little bit. Many horrible incidents have happened around our store, including stabbings, a few shootings, someone being lit on fire, and more. Enter Martin. Homeless, crazy, smells, etc. Over the years he comes in and out, sometimes disappearing for long periods of time to return randomly as if nothing happened. One night another homeless ex-biker gang guy named Ernie comes in and he's out super paranoid looking. I'm a little nervous because this guy has seen some stuff, so WTF could be making him paranoid. A bunch of other homeless outside ask if they can talk to him. He tells them, "Yeah, I'm going to get water, I'll meet you outside." Walks up to the counter and leans in and says,
"This is crazy and it's gotten out of hand."
"A what?"
"They are crazy men. You guys aren't safe. You need to keep your eyes out."
He grabs his water and leaves. Welp, we never see him again. Eventually, these homeless slums around us look a little more cleaned up and we stop seeing some of the really far gone homeless anymore. In my area, there is an old overpass that all the homeless live under. Instead of being a vile trash pile, it now has been cleaned up a little and even has plywood walls and structures around it. All the druggies are gone, it seems, and the less crazy ones are still here. One night, a lady in the drive-thru tells us she saw a homeless man by our dumpsters with a rifle. I'm sorry, what? Check the cameras for the drive-thru, and sure enough, in the background there's a homeless guy hiding in our dumpster area with a rifle. Cops are called and they arrest him. In the dumpster area there is a duffel bag full of guns. Glock 23s, 3 high .22 seconds, sawn-off 12 gauge, .45R pistol, a Ruger .38, 6 poorly made pipe bombs, a few timers, and a firebomb in a plastic 2-liter bottle. The police had me sign off on a no-contact contract, being that it was in our dumpster area. Starbucks, being the piss-poor company that it is, will not sign off on me trying to have these people banned from the lobby. Well, while in custody, this guy will not admit to anything except that they aren't his and someone was supposed to come pick them up. Being that they were in his possession, he still gets put in and has to go to court. Well, the next few days these homeless outside straight up look like they are ready for a fight. Long coats, dirty looks, and always looking around. Martin comes in one day and I snap that original picture of him while waiting to clock in. What is he doing? He's got a bunch of walkie-talkies and he's charging them. Over the next few weeks I see them using these walkies. So I'm cleaning the lobby one night while closing and I hear talking in the bathroom. Open the door and someone had left their walkie in the bathroom. I'm listening to them talk for a few minutes while sitting in the back counting down the tills, and I hear them bring up the bag. They then talk about how they are excited for him to announce the date when they can take everything out and start the attack. Count down as fast as possible, walk my 2 closers to their cars, then leave as quick as I can. I keep the walkie in the store and one of the drawers in the back turned off. Next day, apparently one of the homeless guys came in saying he lost his satellite walkie. Freaks out for a while and eventually leaves. All the homeless begin stirring outside. I come on and my manager tells me that they asked about a walkie and if I knew about it. Tell her it's in the back and go grab it. When I go to walk it out, they all come over and start asking me where it was. I told them it was in the bathroom last night and the battery was out of it, so I just put it in the back till someone asked. Martin was there and asked me if I listened to anything on it. No, I told you the battery was out. You better not be lying to me. Go back inside and start working. At this point I've said screw it and tell my manager what happened and what I heard. She calls the cops and the cops eventually go out to look through their stuff. Not only did they not want them going in, but when they did, they arrested 11 people. A ton of weapons, explosives, and military surplus. They had opened a manhole nearby and started making a bunker down there. I quit not long after that because one of the openers came in to see the front of the store had been shot up. They collected all their brass to not leave evidence, but I know who it was. I haven't worked there in 3 months and have gone back to school, but I still believe something is going on. Where did they get all this shit and what are they planning on attacking?
This happened to my uncle. On Christmas Eve 1994, he was riding his motorcycle with a friend on their way home from visiting my grandparents who lived in a small village in Indonesia. It had rained like crazy the week before. The bridge on the main road had collapsed, so they had to take another route on a dirt road round the hill. They had been riding for a few minutes through the dark forest when suddenly something happened. My uncle hit the brakes so abruptly they almost fell. Hundreds of monkeys were emerging from the bushes a few meters in front of them, making their way to the other side of the dirt road beyond the tree line. My uncle waited patiently until the last monkey disappeared behind the bushes. Just when he was about to start the engine, another monkey walked out of the bushes. This one, my uncle said, was unbelievably huge. Dark grayish and as tall as an adult. It was bulky, and it limped a little as it moved. It was walking upright, very slowly, towards the bushes. And suddenly it stopped in the middle of the road. It turned its head around to look at my uncle. He said he had never felt so scared in his life before. The gigantic monkey stood there still staring into his soul. There was a flash of intimidation and wisdom in its eyes that only comes with old age. And he could see that this beast knew that they knew they were in its territory. My uncle could feel his friend shaking violently behind him. Let me tell you that we are not really familiar with the Sasquatch or Bigfoot legends where I came from, so whatever this thing was, it was neither of these two. After what felt like minutes, the staring contest was finally over when the beast walked into the bushes to join its troop. My uncle waited for a few more minutes until he was convinced no more monkeys were showing up and caught them off guard before they took off. When they finally made their way out of the forest onto the main road, his friend went, "What the hell was that?" My uncle was sure that that huge monkey they had just seen was the leader of the troop. It was just trying to make sure that its troop made it to the other side of the forest safely. But what scared him the most was that it never blinked while staring at him. It still gives him the chills whenever he thinks about the frightening encounter. And as soon as he got home, he called my grandmother to tell her that he had arrived home. He also told her about the beast. She said it might have been the spirit of the forest taking the form of a gigantic monkey. According to local folklore, the forest is old and home to hundreds of ancient spirits. He was lucky he did not encounter the dangerous ones that the locals believed were responsible for the mysterious disappearances of people who had taken a shortcut through the forest.
The following is a story that happened to me in the 1980s. This story takes place in either 86 or 87, on the east side of St. Paul, at the intersection of Bradley Street and Maryland Avenue. It was approximately 11 at night, and I was lying on the couch when I heard a loud crash. I ran outside to see how bad of an accident it was, and when I got to the scene, I saw that a motorcycle had hit a car broadside that was turning onto Maryland Ave. The driver and the passenger were thrown over the top of the car, with the driver landing on the street with his head against the curb, while the passenger was ejected onto the grass of the boulevard. I was the first one there, except for a nurse dressed all in white who was there when I arrived. She was already bending over the motorcycle driver, whose head had hit the curb. She looked at me and told me, "I have this one, you take care of the other." So I went over to the other passenger who had landed on the grass boulevard. The boy's hand was ripped open and he was in shock but conscious. I had to put pressure on his hand because he was bleeding profusely, and then watched the nurse still bent over the other boy. Within a few minutes, other people began arriving, including a policeman. When the policeman arrived, he went over to the boy that had his head smashed against the curb. He spoke with the nurse looking after the boy, then came over to me and asked me how he was doing. He looked at the one I was tending to, and told me to keep the pressure on the cut, and to keep talking to him to keep him awake. Then he went back over to the nurse that was taking care of the other kid. About this time, the ambulance could be heard in the background, making its way to the scene of the accident. The policeman came back over to me and said that he didn't think the other one was going to make it, and asked again how this one was doing. I told him this one was okay for now, but was definitely going into shock. He was shaking because of the shock. Then the policeman met the ambulance and they first looked at the badly injured boy, Then the policeman came back to ask about the one I was with. He asked me if I saw where the nurse went. I had not. By this time, a paramedic had arrived and taken over for me. The policeman was asking the crowd that gathered if they saw where the nurse had gone. He came over to me and took down my information. He again asked if I saw her. I said yes, I spoke with her. He said no one else seems to know where she went, as if she just disappeared. Another motorcyclist was with them, and I ended up giving him a ride in order to pick up the badly injured's mother and drive her to Ramsey Hospital. Having done this, I drove back home. The motorcycle driver was pronounced dead at the hospital. Was the nurse really an angel coming to take someone who was passing?
I have a relatively intriguing story for you guys. 4 years old, my mom marries a member of a bikers-turned-good gang called Gangsters of Love. This guy was born again and studious in the Christian religion. Got my mom really into it. She said her relationship reminded her of King Kong and the Damsel, or Beauty and the Beast. She still claims that it was her favorite relationship outside of her current marriage. He wasn't that straight. He smoked pot on the side, swore at home, had fits of rage occasionally, and also beat the devil out of me for minor stuff. 2 years later, she divorces him. He moves to North Carolina or something. We stopped going to the church we were at. Mom called it a sabbatical. I started having odd recurring nightmares. Once or twice a month. In these dreams, a girl sits in a corner, on a chair, facing the wall in a very dimly lit room with charcoal walls. Much like Pick-related, except not rocking and facing the other way. I don't get to see her face. She wears one black garment. Her head is shaved or burnt in some patches, but otherwise she is completely bald. She is moving as if she is crying, but it is usually quiet. I ask her to stop crying. She stands up. The chair is gone. She walks slowly, rhythmically towards me. I try to move, but I can't. I also can't scream or say anything. She wraps me in her robe and all I see is darkness, but I hear screaming. 3 times out of, 8, my mom woke me up, telling me I was screaming. I typically wake up crying. After she woke me up the 3rd time, she took me to a friend who lived in this dusty, poorly decorated house, lit with low-watt bulbs. It was very eerie to me. She asked me about my nightmares and what happened in them. As I told her, she just looked at me as if she had heard it all before. She told my mom to start going to church again. Prayed for me and rebuked the spirit using Jesus' name. She also suggested moving. Find a nice church. The nightmares stop. Sort of. 2 years after, around the time my mom starts dating her current husband, I get a dream. Biker dad tucks me in and leaves my room. Shadow girl appears at the foot of my bunk bed. She starts pulling my covers off. Try to scream for biker dad. Cannot make a single noise. I wake up and my bed is literally vibrating for a solid minute. I am paralyzed with fear. Vibrating gets more violent, but I don't scream. I just curl into a ball and wait. I start crying, and a few seconds later, it stops. I didn't sleep that night. That was the last one for 12 years. I moved out a few months ago, 7 weeks after my 20th birthday. I tried to keep going to church, but skipped a week occasionally. Last night, Sunday night, was the first night I skipped twice in a row. It came back. Dream that I'm standing in the living room of the trailer I lived in with biker dad. She is standing in the kitchen, terrifyingly overlit by a fluorescent light bulb. I can see her face. It is very Pick-related, but without smoke, lighter skin, and just a straight face. I am still afraid, but not petrified. She stands there. Who are you? I ask. Biker dad's clock sang the Hallelujah chorus every hour. It chimes. We are suddenly in the charcoal room.
I am Idolin.
Nothing about her moves. She is like a statue, but I feel her on me, pressing on my chest.
Tu erunt servi me semper.
It is Latin. I know I butchered the spelling. I wake up and my door slams. Before you say to burn some sage and move. It isn't a location or stronghold thing. I think it has to do with me.
Riding back from a friend's place in West Virginia, taking Highway 250 over a mountain through Washington Jefferson National Forest. I, being a dumb kid, think it's a good idea to ride a motorcycle at night over a mountain. 2-lane highway and lots of turns. Slowly making my way up when I see the taillight ahead. Another motorcycle ahead of me passed him. Stick my right hand out as I pass in greeting. No demon biker or anything, just a dude on a Harley wearing a brain bucket. Couldn't really see much else other than he had a black jacket and a pretty impressive ZZ top beard going for him. Also had a Pennsylvania plate. Really strange to see another biker out at night here, but whatever stranger things have happened. Crest Mountain coming down the slope, see a taillight in front of me. It's one lane here and not really supposed to pass, but bikers do it all the time. I come up next to him, realize it's the same ZZ top looking dude. Pennsylvania plate and all. Sticks his left arm out as I go by. I don't really think much of it for a few seconds, then I realize there is no way this could have happened. I start getting really anxious, and look in my mirror, dude is a little ways back. He's not chasing me or anything, just slowly receding in the distance. Consider hanging back to make sure it was the same guy, but decide to hightail it out of there instead. Make it down the mountain to stop at the first gas station I see, more to calm my nerves than anything else. I know I was just seeing things and that it was two different bikers, but still there is that anxiety that takes a while to go away. Realize bikers never ride by. Sure, there were a few turns down back country farm roads, but the likelihood of that happening at that time of night is slim to none. Make it home and never saw the two bikers or whatever that was again. Not very scary, but I still think about it whenever I'm riding through there.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.